Picture this. You're deep back in the Appalachian woods, just you and the trees. It's quiet, too damn quiet. The sun's slipping away, dragging the last bit of daylight with it. Suddenly, there's a shadow over there in the trees, just barely moving. At first, you think maybe it's a deer or something. But no, this thing, this someone is standing, hunched, just staring. Not like any person you've ever seen. Ragged, filthy, and strange mannerisms, like they just crawled straight out of hell and decided to hang out here. They're watching you, no doubt about it. It's like they've been there all along, waiting for you to stumble into their part of the woods. Your skin's crawling, heartbeat slamming, but you can't fucking move. What the hell are you looking at? This ain't some hiker lost in the woods. Hell no. This is something else. Something that doesn't belong anywhere near the modern world. So, who the hell are these feral people that folks keep whispering about? Is it just backwoods bullshit? Or are there really people out there living wild and savage, hidden in the guts of these mountains? Or worse, maybe they aren't even people at all. The Appalachians are older than time itself, and they don't give a damn about us or our rules. Hang on to your ass, because we're plunging into the heart of this creepy-ass mystery. The Appalachian Mountains. They're no damn joke. Stretching hundreds of miles, these peaks and valleys have been around longer than pretty much anything else on this planet. It's rugged, it's isolated, and it's a place where you don't go fucking around if you don't know what you're doing. There are spots in those woods so deep and twisted that you can get lost in a heartbeat and never be seen again. And out there, far from any cell towers or highways, things don't follow your usual rules. It's no place for the faint-hearted, that's for goddamn sure. But there's something else that comes with all that isolation. When you're out in the middle of nowhere, alone with nothing but trees and shadows for company, strange things have a way of creeping in. And the stories? Holy shit, there are stories. One tale has haunted these mountains for generations. The Pharaoh People. Wild, elusive bastards who've completely cut ties with society, living out there in the wilderness like a straight-up wild animal. And these aren't just folks looking for a little bit of peace and quiet either. According to legend, these people are savage, damn near animalistic, barely clinging to whatever scraps of humanity they've got left. They live in hidden caves and other natural shelters deep into the woods, places where no one else would dare to set foot. Some say they were once like us, but over time, the wilderness turned them into something different, something darker. And let's be honest, there is a part of us that's drawn to these stories. As fucked up as that might sound, it's that twisted fascination with the unknown, the what if that we can't shake. Because deep down, we all know there's something about the wild that's never been fully tamed. We like to pretend we've got it all figured out. The Appalachian wilderness? It doesn't give a single fuck about our neat little version of reality. So let's dig into these tales. These people, or whatever the hell they are, who've made a home in the shadows of the oldest, darkest place in America. The Appalachian Mountains are some of the most unforgiving land you'll find anywhere in the world. We're talking miles of jagged peaks, thick forests, and valleys so deep and dark they look like they go straight down into the bowels of hell itself. The land here is rough, wild, and it sure as fuck isn't a place where you just wander off. That can get deadly due to the terrain in a heartbeat. But in a place like this, with enough hidden corners and untouched woods, it's no stretch to think that someone could live here entirely cut off from the rest of us. Shit, several clans are out there right now, scattered across the hills and hollers, and no one's the wiser. The stories of Pharaoh people go back a long-ass way, and they didn't start with tourists or hikers getting freaked out on their little weekend getaways. This shit goes back to the earliest settlers who first made it out here, facing a land that was as hostile as it was mysterious. These folks would gather around the campfire at night, passing on tales of things they'd seen, figures darting through the trees, strange sounds echoing from deep in the woods. It wasn't long before whispers of Pharaoh people started spreading. Wild, ragged folks who didn't want anything to do with civilized life and would damn well make sure you didn't come anywhere near them. And it wasn't just the settlers telling these tales either. Native American tribes had their own legends about the mysterious wild man roaming the mountains long before any European set foot on this land. They talked about reclusive, secretive figures that stalked the forests, living by their own rules in a world that didn't belong to anyone else. The natives knew better than to get involved. They'd warn others to steer clear of certain places, knowing it was best not to fuck with these Pharaoh people. In these stories, these people aren't just off the grid or hiding out from the law. There's something far deeper, something almost alien to the rest of us. They have their own way of living, hell, even their own language, or what sounds like it. It's said they grunt, they snarl, they make clicking noises, and if you listen close enough, you can hear them muttering in some guttural dialect that doesn't make a lick of sense to anyone but them. They don't want anything to do with civilization, and they damn sure don't follow our rules. When people talk about seeing these Pharaoh folks, the descriptions are enough to make your skin crawl. You'll hear stories of emaciated figures lurking in the shadows. People so thin they look like they haven't eaten a sandwich in years. Their hair is long and matted. As a matter of fact, any body hair they have is excessively long. They're usually naked if it's warm enough. Otherwise, their garb is like a sheet with a hole cut in the middle. They move weird, like animals, crouching, crawling, sometimes even running on all fours. And if you're unlucky enough to get close, you might catch sight of something even darker. These people, if they are people, are said to cling to fucked up beliefs and twisted traditions that nobody on the outside could understand. There's a big difference between someone who's just trying to get away from society and someone who's never even known what society is. These Pharaoh people, according to the lore, they're the latter. What's so hard to wrap my head around is they didn't choose to leave civilization behind. they never had it in the first place. I mean, think caveman mentality. Their whole world is the forest, the mountains, and the shadows. And they'll do whatever it takes to survive, even if it means doing the unthinkable. See, the darkest part of this legend is that these Pharaoh people are cannibals. When food runs out, and out there deep in the Appalachian Mountains, food runs out pretty fucking quick, they turn to whatever or whoever they can find. What's strange is they don't eat their own. They only eat other civilized people that wander into their domain. And they have a preference of which body part they enjoy the most: the brain. How do we know this? Well, a couple of these Pharaoh people were seen acting weird, spazzing out on the side of the road on separate occasions. The hikers and campers that witnessed them called the paramedics to try to help them out. After the medics arrived, these Pharaoh people were diagnosed with a nasty, rare, incurable disease called kuru. The only way to catch kuru is by eating human brains. Kuru rots the mind and makes them even more wild, unpredictable, and dangerous. It eats away at the brain, twisting the mind, making them lose complete muscle control. They start to cry or laugh uncontrollably, show dementia-like symptoms, and eventually coma and death. So, when you're out there thinking you're just another hiker or camper with a cool story to tell when you get back, remember this: pay attention to your surroundings. These mountains have eyes, and they're watching every goddamn move you make. All right, let's dive into the dark heart of these twisted tales: the sightings. It's one thing to hear about mysterious figures in some old-ass folklore, but when you've got real people, folks just like you and me, telling stories of shit they've seen with their own eyes, that's when things get truly unsettling. These aren't just stories from centuries ago. People are seeing these fuckers right now. So, what's going on? Are they just imagining things, or is there something out there watching from the shadows, just waiting for the right moment to make itself known? The truth may be wilder than we could imagine. Let's start with a classic encounter. More specifically, I'll start with the encounter that really kicked this wild phenomenon into oh shit mode: the Dennis Martin case. Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy from Knoxville, was visiting the Great Smoky Mountains National Park along with his father, grandfather, and older brother on Father's Day weekend in 1969. The family hiked from Cades Cove to Russell Field and camped overnight. The next day, they hiked to Spence Field near the Appalachian Trail, where they planned to spend the night. On June 14 at 4:30 p.m., while hiding to jump scare everyone from a bush, Dennis just fucking disappeared. He was last seen by his father going behind a bush to hide, intending on pranking the adults and other children. After not seeing him for about 5 minutes, his father became concerned and began searching for him. His father frantically checked everywhere. After several hours, he contacted the National Park Service Rangers. The area where Martin disappeared has steep slopes and jagged ravines. Wild animals like copperhead snakes, bears, feral hogs, and bobcats are commonly seen in the area. A downpour broke out shortly after Dennis's disappearance, dropping 3 inches of rain in a matter of hours, which caused streams to flood and wash away any evidence. Temperatures on the night of June 14 dropped to nearly 50 degrees Fahrenheit. An epic search was done by the National Guard and the Green Berets. A total of 1,400 search and rescue workers were deployed. Child-sized footprints were found that led to a stream where they disappeared. The tracks indicated that one foot was barefoot while the other was in an Oxford, the same type of shoe Dennis was wearing when he disappeared. Retired park ranger Dwight MacArthur believes that the prints likely belonged to Dennis, as the tracks were not part of a group and none of the Boy Scouts were searching while barefoot. On June 22nd, 8 days later, 56 square miles of ground had been covered. More than 1,000 searchers continued to look until June 26, when the search was scaled back. The search was officially closed down on September 14, 1969. As of 2024, it's still the largest search in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. There are 3 theories about what happened to Dennis Martin. The first is that he became lost and died from exposure or some other cause, not long after the first night. According to park rangers, this is the most probable theory. The second is that he was attacked by a hungry bear or some other predator and carried off. And the last is that he was abducted and taken out of the park by something or someone. His father favored this theory. Interestingly, on the afternoon that Martin disappeared, tourist Harold Key and his family heard an enormous, sickening scream come from the woods and shortly thereafter witnessed an unkempt, shaggy, rough-looking man running up the trail where the scream had come from. Key also claimed the shaggy man was carrying some sort of cloth or clothing over his shoulder. Harold Key said his sighting happened roughly an hour after the disappearance of Dennis Martin and a mere 5 miles from the incident. Park rangers and the FBI found insufficient evidence linking the sighting to Martin's disappearance, noting it was about 5 miles away as a crow flies, or 7 to 9 miles by trail, making it unlikely anyone could cover that distance in the time between Martin's disappearance and the reported incident. But we're not talking about normal people here. We're talking about folks that don't use trails. We're talking about a wild man that can run faster than a dog and climb a tree like a fucking squirrel. Another encounter happened to Brandon, who lives near Erwin, Tennessee, along with his wife Sally and their dog. Brandon and Sally have had 2 encounters with the feral wild men. One encounter as recent as April 2021. Brandon said the first encounter was back in June of 2019, when he and Sally were both in their living room hanging out, watching TV at about 8 p.m. They were startled when they saw a deformed man's face appear in the window. Sally yelled out in fright. It stared at them for a few seconds, then gave an evil smile and ran off into the woods. They immediately called the police. The police searched the yard and the tree line, but found nothing. By 11 p.m., while in bed, Brandon and Sally, who couldn't sleep and had the gun nearby, heard creepy laughing from outside the window. The laugh was a lunatic type of laugh. Brandon grabbed his gun, went out on the porch, and yelled, "Get the fuck out of here!" and shot 2 rounds into the air. Brandon saw not 1, but 2 wild men run from behind his shed and into the woods, the crunch of the leaves fading off in the distance. Brandon was so freaked at the sight of them that he slammed the door shut and locked it. He returned to bed with his wife, but they didn't go to sleep. You think? The following morning, Sally routinely lets their dog outside. The dog will do her business, then will always return to the front door and scratch to be let back in. The dog hasn't been seen again since she let her outside that following morning. A week later, Sally had a sighting. She was unloading groceries from her truck when something up in the trees grabbed her attention. She saw a deformed man up in a tree staring at her and grinning widely. She got back in her truck and drove to her husband's office. They don't know what to do because the police are finding nothing. Brandon's description of the wild men? Over 6 feet tall, thin but toned body, long, dark, matted hair on their heads with patches of long hair throughout their bodies, pale gray, filthy skin, long, curled fingernails, only one tooth in its mouth. Its eyes are large, wide, and pale blue. They have deformed features in the face and head. It looks like a large version of Smeagol from the Lord of the Rings. The dog was eventually found just under a mile away from the house, dead. There wasn't much left of her but fur and bones. Sally believes a feral wild man is responsible. They continue to have sightings, but mostly up in the trees. The police have told Brandon and his wife that they are most likely seeing campers in the woods. Bullshit! Sally stated that she's aware of times when the feral wild men are near because of an odor, a very distinct foul odor, like a combination of body odor, shit, and rotten meat. Sally has been having more sightings than her husband. They believe the feral wild men are more interested in her. Uh-oh. They still continue to hear the lunatic type of laughing in the woods at night from time to time. Oh, fuck that shit. So, yeah, people are seeing something out there in the Appalachians. Maybe it's just their minds fucking with them, or maybe it's just something that doesn't want to be found. But one thing's for sure, if you're out there in the dead of night and you start to feel like you're not alone, you probably aren't. Trust your instincts. If you're lucky, whatever's out there watching you will just let you pass on by. The why behind these spine-chilling tales has people scratching their heads. Why do so many swear they've seen beings that seem out of place and downright eerie? One common theory is that these sightings of so-called Pharaoh People boil down to misunderstandings. The Appalachian Mountains are home to many who choose to live off-grid, rejecting society, technology, and anything associated with modern life. These reclusive folks build their own shelters, hunt, gather, and live as they please. They don't pay taxes or shop at stores, and they often look a bit wild because, shit, they are. They're living a self-sufficient, isolated life that naturally gives them a rugged appearance. But when an unsuspecting hiker stumbles onto their land and catches a glimpse of them, the mind jumps to wild conclusions, believing they've just seen a feral creature. Fear can twist the memory so that a shadowy figure is remembered as something more menacing, something straight out of a nightmare. Isolation itself is also a powerful catalyst. Alone in the deep woods, the mind has a way of fucking with you. Every snap of a twig or rustling in the bushes becomes a potential threat. Every shadow a lurking danger. When fear takes over, the senses go into overdrive. Suddenly, that rustling isn't a harmless animal. It's a presence, watching and waiting. In the darkness and silence, fear's grip grows strong, and even rational people start to feel they're not alone. But some argue it's not all in our heads. There's a group who believes these sightings hint at something more than misunderstandings. The Appalachians have a long history of strange stories, not just about Pharaoh people, but also about cryptids and supernatural beings. Some believe these so-called Pharaoh people might not just be reclusive humans, but something older. They're a part of the land in ways we can't comprehend. Reports of people seeing these beings vanish into thin air, or finding tracks that appear and disappear as if by magic, fuel theories of a cryptid-like existence. Some believe they have a unique connection with the land, allowing them to disappear at will, blending with their surroundings until they're nothing but a shadow. One theory links these Pharaoh people back to the Civil War. When the draft became a reality, many men unwilling to fight in the war escaped into the hills, making a new life in the wilderness. Over generations, these men and their descendants may have adapted so fully to their secluded life that they've become nearly invisible to modern society. These hidden clans, according to some, might be the source of today's sightings. People who have mastered survival in ways that make them appear almost superhuman. Some have said that they are Native Americans who escaped the Trail of Tears and went into hiding in the deep backwoods of the Appalachian Mountains. Others take it a step further, speculating that years of isolation, coupled with inbreeding and the harsh conditions of mountain survival, might have physically and mentally altered these people. Some sightings describe them as gaunt with a strange look in their eyes, a look that doesn't seem quite human. Stories circulate about them doing whatever the fuck it takes to survive, even resorting to cannibalism when resources run low. Some tales recount missing people found with parts of their bodies eaten. So maybe some stories are the product of frightened hikers or an overactive imagination. But what if there's more to it? What if, deep in the Appalachian Mountains, there are people who've lived away from civilization for so long that they've become something else entirely? They have no idea of our concept of society, adapting to a reality most of us would never understand. In the dense, endless forests, these beings operate by a code foreign to us, one we might not want to fuck with. Out there in the heart of the mountains, there may be things we're not meant to find. Creatures that exist just beyond the light, waiting in a world where we don't belong. These stories, tales of Pharaoh people lurking in the Appalachians, they hit deep, right in that primal part of our brains that's scared shitless of the dark, of being alone, of facing something wild that doesn't give a damn about civilization. Because that's what it comes down to, isn't it? It's the fear of isolation, of finding yourself out there in a land that's older, harsher, and hungrier than any of us city folks can imagine. And to think, maybe there's something hiding in those shadows, something that's barely human, something that doesn't play by our rules. Well, that's the kind of shit that fucks with you. These legends, these dark-ass stories, keep getting passed down, whispered around campfires, hinted at by locals, and just hanging out there in the thick of the woods. It's like these tales have a life of their own, and every person who hears them, Every hiker who feels a pair of eyes on them when they're supposed to be alone adds another layer of mystery. Hell, even if it's all just stories, they're enough to make you wonder what the fuck's out there. Enough to make you second guess every goddamn sound you hear in the middle of the night. So, what do you think? Are these stories just pure bullshit? Nothing but tales told to keep us away from certain parts of the mountains? Or is there something more out there? Something that's still watching, still hiding, waiting for the next poor soul to stumble too close? Maybe it's all just myth, but maybe there's something out there in those mountains after all. Something that's been waiting for years to remind us that the wilderness doesn't belong to us. Man, it never fucking did. If you think this video is dope as hell, don't forget to tap that like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on more of my fucked up commentary. And besides, I really do appreciate it. So, what do you think? The Pharaoh People. Are they real, or are they just a good old-fashioned creepy campfire story? Let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to check out my kick-fucking-ass merch. The link's in the description. I've got Scarinator t-shirts and tanks, Stay Creepy t-shirts, tanks, mugs, stickers, and all kinds of epic stuff. Until next time, y'all keep it real, keep it chill, and stay creepy! Catch you on the flip. Thank you for watching and listening until the very end. You kick total ass.